The crystal light of the chandelier bathed the Cavendish Mansion's ballroom in a radiant cascade, transforming the space into a vision of opulence, as if woven from threads of light, gold, and power. Delicate melodies from a violin quartet intertwined with the gentle clink of champagne flutes, while the air shimmered with the heady scent of custom-crafted perfumes. The gold-leafed walls gleamed, reflecting a scene of breathtaking elegance, yet beneath this polished veneer pulsed the cold calculations of high society. At the center of the room stood Julian Cavendish, a young millionaire with a flawless smile and razor-sharp brown eyes that commanded the space. His tailored black tuxedo hugged his tall frame, each precise gesture drawing the attention of powerful tycoons and women in shimmering gowns. But tonight, a shadow loomed over his calm exterior, a family secret weighing heavy on his heart, poised to thrust him into a game of deception and unforeseen love. A sudden hush fell over the crowd, the atmosphere taut as a bowstring, as Julian's sister, Amelia Cavendish, stepped forward. Her graceful presence was underscored by a steely gaze, her polished smile a mask for her resolve. In a low, unwavering voice, she declared a shocking decree. Julian must marry Elise Harper, her closest friend, to conceal a scandal threatening the Cavendish family's vast fortune and their empire, Cavendish Enterprises. Whispers rippled through the guests, their curious eyes fixed on Julian, as if he were the protagonist in a gripping drama unfolding before them. He gripped his champagne flute tightly, jaw clenched, a surge of fury rising in his chest. The scandal, a web of financial missteps tied to the family's legacy, was a lethal threat, and refusal meant losing the empire he'd spent his life protecting. Elise, the woman named, was absent, but Julian had glimpsed her, a slender figure with intelligent green eyes and an enigmatic smile. To him, she was merely a tool, an inconvenience he must endure, unaware that this marriage would plunge him into a labyrinth of painful truths and a love he never anticipated. Julian stood frozen, the icy flute in his fingers, as the guests' whispers grew louder, their eyes dissecting him like predators circling prey. He took a sip of champagne, its bitter sting mirroring the bite of Amelia's proclamation. The secret was a ticking time bomb, known only to the family's inner circle, and this marriage was the shield to bury it. Yet a spark of unease flared within, a sense that he was stepping into a game with stakes he couldn't yet grasp. He glanced at the towering windows, where New York City's lights twinkled like a distant promise, but his thoughts drifted to Elise Harper, a woman he barely knew beyond her tie to Amelia. He told himself she was a means to an end, a necessary sacrifice to protect his legacy. But the memory of her piercing glance unsettled him, as if she held a power he couldn't yet fathom. Amelia's decree pressed down like a chain, binding him to a future he didn't choose, and he wondered what hidden motives drove his sister to orchestrate such a marriage. Far from the ballroom's splendor, Elise sat in a modest New York apartment, morning light streaming through a cracked window, illuminating the worn wooden table where she worked. Her nimble fingers danced across her laptop's keyboard, her simple navy dress a stark contrast to the world she was about to enter. Her emerald eyes, sharp and focused, betrayed a resolve at odds with her role as Amelia's friend. The distant chirping of birds went unnoticed as she reviewed an encrypted file, a dossier detailing the Cavendish family's misdeeds, crimes that had ruined her own family. For Elise was not just a confidant. She was the daughter of the Cavendish's sworn enemy, disguised for vengeance. The rumble of an engine broke her focus, and she looked up, eyes narrowing as a sleek black limousine pulled into the alley. Julian emerged, his navy suit exuding authority, his cold eyes scanning the apartment's facade. Without preamble, he knocked and offered a check, $5 million gleaming like a hollow promise. He demanded she marry him for a year, in exchange for financial stability. Elise held her breath, fingers trembling as they touched the check, a bitter smile flickering across her lips, as if it were a cruel jest from a wealthy man. But Julian's unyielding gaze and the staggering sum silenced her fleeting defiance. She wanted to reject it, to tell him to take his money and leave. But the dossier on her screen burned in her mind, a reminder of her mission to infiltrate the Cavendish family, destroy them from within, and avenge her father's downfall. Julian's offer was an unexpected gateway, a chance to access the secrets she'd long pursued. She exhaled sharply, suppressing a storm of emotions, and nodded. Julian nodded back, turning away, leaving her with the check and a pang in her chest. She knew she'd entered a dangerous game, but her purpose was clear: to bring down the Cavendish dynasty, using their mansion as her battlefield. Elise remained at her desk, tucking the check away, her eyes returning to her father's photo on the table. His resolute face was a silent vow urging her forward. The apartment, with its peeling paint and sparse furnishings, stood in stark contrast to the opulence awaiting her, a reminder of the life she'd left behind to pursue vengeance. This was no mere transaction. Julian Cavendish, with his sharp intellect and guarded demeanor, was a formidable opponent, and every moment in his world would test the facade she'd perfected. She stood, her movements fluid and precise, her disguise a second skin she'd mastered. The secure phone in her pocket buzzed with a new message. "The Cavendish Gala is your entry. Secure the files." Elise memorized the instructions, her training kicking in. But the thought of facing Julian again, stepping into his gilded world, stirred a mix of resolve and unease. Julian was not just a target. He was a man whose charisma could unravel even the most guarded heart, and Elise needed to stay sharp to resist his pull. Back in the ballroom, Julian lingered as the crowd dispersed, his champagne flute still in hand. He stared out at the city, its lights a mosaic of ambition, but his mind clung to Elise, a woman he viewed as a necessity. He told himself she was a tool to protect his family's secret, but Amelia's calculated smile and the guests' whispers made him feel as if he'd stepped onto a chessboard with unseen pieces. He took another sip, the bitterness lingering, and pushed the unease aside. He was Julian Cavendish, a man who never faltered. Yet in the silence, a whisper of warning stirred, hinting that this game might not be about power alone, but about confronting a heart he'd long thought untouchable, a heart now stirring with questions he couldn't answer. 2 worlds apart, neither saw the path fate had carved, a journey where love, betrayal, and truth would collide. The Cavendish mansion, with its radiant elegance, was now a chessboard, each move by Elise and Julian a delicate balance between triumph and ruin. Elise stood in her apartment, eyes fierce with purpose, but her heart raced, sensing a storm on the horizon. Julian, in the mansion, felt a chill breeze through the window, as if fate itself signaled the challenges ahead. Both believed they held control, unaware that the heart could rewrite any game's rules. All right, before you settle in, take a sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely vibing with what I'm putting out here, and drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. The feeble sunlight filtered through the cracked window of a modest New York apartment, casting faint shadows across the worn wooden table where Elise Harper sat, her nimble fingers dancing over the laptop's keyboard. Her simple navy dress hugged her frame, understated yet precise. But her emerald eyes, sharp with intent, revealed a purpose far beyond that of an ordinary friend. The distant chirping of birds filled the air, yet Elise's focus remained unbroken. Her gaze locked on an encrypted dossier detailing the Cavendish family's misdeeds, crimes that had shattered her own family years ago. As the daughter of their sworn enemy, she had crafted a perfect disguise to infiltrate their world, every move calculated for vengeance. The sudden roar of an engine broke her concentration, and she glanced up, eyes narrowing cautiously as a sleek black limousine rolled into the alley, its polished surface a stark contrast to the apartment's faded facade. Julian Cavendish emerged, his navy suit a symbol of power, his cold brown eyes scanning the building. Without a word, he knocked and placed a check on the table, $5 million gleaming like an empty promise of salvation. He demanded she marry him for a year, in exchange for financial security. Elise froze, her fingers trembling as they brushed the check, a faint, bitter smile flickering across her lips, as if it were a cruel jest from a privileged man. But Julian's unyielding stare and the staggering sum before her silenced her fleeting defiance. She wanted to reject it, to throw the check back and tell him to leave, but the dossier on her screen burned in her mind, a stark reminder of her true identity and her mission to destroy the Cavendish family from within. Her father's downfall, orchestrated by their ruthless ambition, had left her with nothing but a vow of revenge, and Julian's offer was an unexpected gateway to their inner sanctum. Her breath caught, a storm of emotions swelling within, anger, resolve, and a flicker of fear, but she forced it down, her determination hardening like steel. With a slow nod, she accepted. Julian mirrored her gesture, his face impassive, then turned and walked away, leaving her with the check and a piercing ache in her chest. She knew she had stepped into a dangerous game, but her purpose was clear: to bring down the Cavendish dynasty, using their mansion as her battlefield. Elise remained at the table, tucking the check into a drawer, her eyes drifting to her father's photo on the desk. His resolute face a silent anchor for her mission. The apartment, with its peeling wallpaper and sparse furnishings, was a world apart from the opulence she was about to enter, a reminder of the life she had sacrificed to pursue justice. Her hands, steady despite the weight of her decision, felt foreign against the laptop's sleek surface, its secrets a testament to the years she had spent gathering evidence, financial records, correspondence, anything to prove the Cavendish family's guilt. Julian's proposal, born of their need to conceal a family scandal, was her chance to strike at the heart of their empire. But Julian himself was a wild card, his sharp intellect and guarded demeanor a barrier she must overcome. She recalled the moment he handed her the check, his eyes softening for a fleeting second before hardening again, and wondered what lay beneath his polished exterior. The thought sent a shiver through her, a mix of unease and curiosity she couldn't afford. She stood, the chair's creak beneath her a quiet echo of her resolve, and moved to a hidden compartment under the floor, retrieving her tools: a secure phone, a micro camera, and a locket containing her father's photo. The locket was her talisman, forged in the ashes of her family's ruin, a loss that had driven her to abandon her old life and become a master of deception. Her fingers brushed the locket, her jaw tightening as she recalled her father's dreams, shattered by the Cavendish family's greed. This mission was for him, for the justice they had been denied, and Elise could not let personal emotions, especially not for a man like Julian, derail her. Her role as Amelia's friend, a persona she had perfected to deflect suspicion, was her shield. But the stakes had risen with Julian's offer, and she felt the pressure of her dual identity like a vice. The limousine's departure left a dusting of dirt in the alley, its roaring engine fading into the morning's hum. Elise's mission was clear: infiltrate the Cavendish family, expose their secrets, and dismantle their empire. But the weight of her new role, Julian's wife, a stranger in his world, pressed heavily on her shoulders. She needed to act swiftly, to uncover evidence before her cover frayed. Yet Julian's presence, even in his absence, loomed larger, making her question her resolve. The Cavendish mansion, with its promise of answers, rose in her mind like a fortress, its gilded halls hiding the secrets she needed to unearth. Julian's cold offer was her means to an end, but the memory of his gaze, briefly unguarded, almost human, sparked a flicker of doubt. Elise pushed it aside, her resolve a steel core forged in loss, but a quiet voice warned that this game might demand more than revenge. It might demand her heart, a risk she wasn't prepared to take. Elise returned to her laptop, the dossier still open, its pages a map of her mission. She added a new entry to her encrypted notes, her handwriting steady despite the tremor in her chest. Cavendish offer. Entry secured. Target archives in mansion. Closing the laptop, she slipped it into her bag, her eyes returning to the locket, her father's face urging her forward. The mission was her lifeline, the truth her only path to closure. But the thought of facing Julian again, stepping into his glittering world, stirred a mix of determination and dread. Julian was not just a target, he was a man whose power mirrored her own, and Elise needed to stay vigilant to resist the pull of his presence. The apartment's silence weighed on her, broken only by the distant city's hum, and Elise steeled herself for the path ahead, knowing each step brought her closer to justice, and to a reckoning with her own heart. The limousine glided through Manhattan's streets, its sleek form slicing through the night, the city's lights dancing on its tinted windows like scattered stars on a velvet canvas. Inside, Elise Harper sat in silence, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the black silk dress, a gift from Julian Cavendish, clinging to her frame, a constant reminder of the role she had just assumed. Across from her, Julian sat rigid, his hazel eyes staring into the world beyond the glass, his silence a heavy curtain between them. They had just left the marriage registry, where their wedding had unfolded in a brief, sterile exchange, witnessed only by a handful of strangers and an officiant. The vows were recited like contract clauses, devoid of warmth, and when Julian slid the ring onto Elise's finger, a sharp pang coursed through his chest, as if a piece of his autonomy had been surrendered to this calculated union. The limousine's journey was a quiet descent into this new reality, the city's neon glow a stark contrast to the tension within the car. Elise's hands, delicate yet steady, felt foreign in the smooth silk of the dress, its elegance a costume for a part she hadn't chosen. She faced Julian, his silhouette sharp against the window, his silence louder than any words. The ceremony replayed in her mind, the officiant's monotone voice, the cold weight of the ring, the absence of joy. Julian's detachment was palpable, his eyes never meeting hers, and Elise wondered what secret had driven a man like him to bind himself to a stranger. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on her mission, but the memory of his fleeting glance at the registry, sharp yet unreadable, lingered like a warning. At the Cavendish mansion, Elise was ushered into a bedroom that dwarfed the modest apartment she called home. Thick emerald velvet curtains framed the windows, a sprawling silk-draped bed dominated the space, and a wardrobe brimmed with designer gowns that shimmered under the chandelier's soft glow. The housekeeper, Clara, departed with a quiet nod, leaving Elise alone in the opulent room. She stood in its center, her fingers grazing the edge of a polished ebony table, her green eyes scanning every detail with a predator's precision. Elise was not merely Elise Harper, Amelia's friend. She was the daughter of the Cavendish family's sworn enemy, disguised to infiltrate their world and destroy them from within. This marriage was her chance to breach Julian's inner circle, to uncover the secrets that had ruined her family and avenge her father's downfall. She unlocked her small bag, its soft rustle breaking the silence, and withdrew a faded photo of her father, his resolute gaze frozen in time. Elise clutched the photo, her eyes blazing with fierce determination, yet a thread of unease wove through her resolve. Julian, with his razor-sharp gaze, was not a man easily deceived. The mansion's grandeur, its plush carpets, ornate furnishings, and glittering chandeliers, was a world apart from the cramped apartment Elise knew, a reminder of the chasm between her life and Julian's. She moved with purpose, her eyes cataloging the space. The heavy curtains that could conceal a listener, the sturdy table that might hide a safe. Her mission demanded precision, and this room, though a luxurious cage, was now her base. Her father's photo rested in her hand, his face a silent plea for justice. Elise's mission was clear: uncover the evidence, expose the Cavendish family's crimes, and honor her family's legacy. But the weight of her new role, Julian's wife, a stranger in his world, pressed heavily on her shoulders. She needed to act swiftly, to find proof before her cover frayed. Yet Julian's presence, even in his absence, loomed larger, making her question her resolve. Elise tucked the photo away, her fingers brushing the locket she kept hidden, its weight a testament to the loss that had shaped her. The Cavendish family's betrayal had destroyed her father, stripping her family of everything, and Elise had spent years gathering fragments of evidence, financial records, witness testimonies, anything to prove their guilt. This marriage, born of Julian's need to conceal a family scandal, was her unexpected chance to strike at the heart of their empire. But Julian himself was a wild card, his sharp intellect and commanding presence a barrier she must overcome. She recalled the moment he handed her the check, his eyes softening for a fleeting moment before hardening again, and wondered what lay beneath his polished exterior. The thought sent a shiver through her, a mix of unease and curiosity she couldn't afford. Standing in the bedroom, the mansion's silence pressed down on her, broken only by the distant hum of the city beyond the window. Elise's mission was her lifeline, the truth her only path to closure, but her growing connection to Julian was a dangerous distraction. She moved to the window, the city's lights a distant constellation, and steeled herself for the path ahead. The Cavendish mansion, with its gilded halls and hidden truths, was now her battlefield, and Julian was both her adversary and an enigma she couldn't ignore. Her heart pounded, a drumbeat of resolve tempered by a whisper of fear, not of failure, but of the possibility that this game might demand more than revenge. It might demand her heart, a price she wasn't ready to pay. The room's opulence felt suffocating, each detail a reminder of the stakes. Elise's bag, a simple relic from her old life, lay on the floor, starkly out of place amid the silk and velvet. She opened it again, retrieving a small encrypted device, its screen lighting up with a new message. Mansion access secured. Target files in Cavendish's office. Elise memorized the instructions, her training kicking in, but the thought of facing Julian again, stepping deeper into his glittering world, stirred a blend of determination and dread. Julian was not just a target, he was a man whose power mirrored her own, and Elise needed to stay vigilant to resist the pull of his presence. The mission was clear, but the path was shadowed, and Elise braced herself for the challenges ahead, knowing each step brought her closer to justice and to a reckoning with her own heart. The weeks that followed at the Cavendish mansion were a crucible for Elise Harper. Each day a precarious dance on a knife's edge. She attended lavish galas, standing beside Julian Cavendish with a sharp, calculated smile, her presence a stark contrast to the glittering elite surrounding her. Every scrutinizing glance from the guests, tycoons, heirs, and corporate magnates, was a reminder that she was an interloper, treading a dangerous path where a single misstep could unravel her mission. Elise adapted to their high society world with the finesse of a chameleon, maintaining a graceful facade to deflect their probing eyes. But in her solitary moments, she slipped into Julian's private office, searching for documents tied to the Cavendish family's scandal, a betrayal that had destroyed her own family years before. Her movements were meticulous, her touch feather-light to avoid leaving any trace, but each time she emerged, a prickling unease stabbed at her, as if invisible eyes tracked her every step. Julian, who initially viewed Elise as a mere tool to conceal his family's secret, began to notice the layers beneath her polished exterior. Her quick wit in the face of veiled mockery from the elite, her incisive remarks on business matters, and the way she smiled, not to please, but with an enigmatic secret, drew him in, like a moth to a hidden flame. He had pegged her as a convenient pawn, a means to protect Cavendish enterprises, but her presence stirred something unexpected. One evening, in the mansion's moonlit garden, Elise's hand brushed a wine glass, sending it crashing to the ground. Julian caught her arm to steady her, his fingers grazing her skin, and a strange, warm current shot up his spine. She murmured an apology, her voice soft but steady, but her emerald eyes, deep and mysterious, seemed to hold a story he yearned to unravel, a puzzle that both captivated and unsettled him. Elise sensed the shift in Julian's demeanor, a softening in his gaze that unnerved her. She couldn't let him get closer, couldn't let her heart waver from its course. Her mission demanded unwavering focus, and she doubled her efforts, pouring her energy into uncovering the truth. In one clandestine search, she discovered a hidden safe behind a panel in Julian's office, its lock a formidable barrier she had yet to crack. Each night, as she lay in the sprawling silk-draped bed in her opulent room, her thoughts churned. The image of her father, his face frozen in the photo she kept close, mingling with memories of the Cavendish family's betrayal, a wound that fueled her vengeance. But Julian's face intruded, his piercing eyes, his low, warm voice, stirring a tide of emotions she fought to suppress, a storm threatening to sweep away her resolve. The mansion, with its gilded halls and shadowed corners, was both prison and battlefield. Elise navigated social gatherings with precision, her clever smile a shield against the elite's curiosity. She learned their etiquette, their subtle power games, blending into their world while guarding her true self. But the weight of their judgment was relentless, each whispered jab about her mysterious origins, a reminder of her precarious position. In the quiet hours, when the mansion slept, she crept through its halls, her footsteps silent on the marble floors, her heart pounding as she rifled through files in Julian's office. The safe remained her elusive target, its contents the potential key to the scandal she sought to expose. She was meticulous, erasing every sign of her presence, but the sense of being watched grew stronger, a ghostly presence keeping her on edge. Julian's growing fascination with Elise was a complication she hadn't anticipated. His initial detachment had been easier to navigate, a clear boundary between them. But now his gaze lingered, his rare smiles carrying a warmth that chipped at her defenses. That moment in the garden replayed in her mind, his brief touch, the unexpected jolt it sent through her. She had quickly apologized, her voice betraying none of the turmoil within. But Julian's eyes had lingered, searching, as if glimpsing the weight she carried. It was a dangerous shift, one that threatened to blur her mission's lines. She couldn't afford to feel, not when the memory of her father's downfall drove her forward, his loss a fire blazing in her chest. Each night, as she lay sleepless, the mansion's silence pressed down on her, broken only by the distant hum of the city. Her father's photo rested on the bedside table, his resolute face a silent plea for justice. Elise's mission was clear: find the evidence, expose the Cavendish family's crimes, and honor her family's legacy. But Julian's presence, his unexpected kindness, cast a lengthening shadow, sowing doubt in her resolve. She traced the locket she kept hidden, its weight a reminder of the betrayal that had shaped her life, and steeled herself against the pull of his warmth. The safe in Julian's office loomed in her mind, its secrets the key to her vengeance. But the thought of facing Julian, seeing the man behind the empire, stirred a quiet fear. This game was no longer just about revenge. It was about guarding a heart she had long thought unbreakable, a heart now trembling on the brink of surrender. The mansion's opulence felt suffocating, each detail a reminder of the stakes. Elise's bag, a simple relic from her old life, lay on the floor, starkly out of place amid the silk and velvet. She opened it, retrieving a small encrypted device, its screen glowing with a new message. Critical office files. Secure them at the next gala. Elise memorized the instructions, her training kicking in, but the thought of facing Julian again, delving deeper into his world, stirred a mix of determination and dread. Julian was not just a target. He was a man whose power mirrored her own, and Elise needed to stay vigilant to resist the pull of his presence. The mission was her lifeline, but the path was shadowed, and Elise braced herself for the challenges ahead, knowing each step brought her closer to justice and to a reckoning with her own heart. The golden glow of chandeliers bathed Étoile, New York's pinnacle of opulence, in a warm, shimmering light that seemed to pulse with the energy of the city's elite. Elise Harper stepped through the grand entrance, her deep crimson silk gown clinging to her slender frame, a far cry from the modest attire of her past. Her emerald eyes, resolute and unwavering, betrayed none of the turmoil within. Beside her, Julian Cavendish moved with effortless grace, his tailored black tuxedo accentuating his commanding presence, his hazel eyes flickering toward Elise with a fleeting spark of admiration. The crowd's whispers followed them, a wave of curiosity about the enigmatic companion now shining beside the millionaire heir of Cavendish Enterprises. The dining room, with its velvet drapes and polished silver, exuded formality. But Elise felt the weight of Amelia Cavendish's gaze, sharp, probing, as if she could pierce the carefully crafted veil of Elise's disguise. The dinner unfolded with meticulous precision, each course a testament to the restaurant's prestige, but a simmering tension lingered beneath the surface. Elise sat composed, her movements deliberate, her refined smile a shield against the elite's scrutiny. The guests, financiers, socialites, and corporate titans, exchanged glances, their murmurs speculating about her sudden prominence, her presence a riddle in their gilded world. Amelia's stare was the keenest, her cold eyes dissecting Elise, as if sensing a hidden motive beneath her graceful facade. Elise met each gaze with calm defiance, her resolve honed by years of plotting vengeance as the daughter of the Cavendish family's sworn enemy. But her pulse quickened under the pressure, her mission to expose the family's scandal, a betrayal that had shattered her own family, ever present in her mind. As the conversation flowed, an older tycoon with a patronizing tone probed into Elise's past, his question laced with curiosity about her humble origins. The table fell silent, anticipation hanging heavy, but Elise responded with a deftness that surprised even herself, weaving a tale both vague and captivating, her words sharp yet measured. Her reply disarmed the room, eliciting a moment of stunned silence before a wave of applause erupted. Julian's gaze lingered on her, his eyes alight with a mix of surprise and respect, a spark that sent a tremor through Elise's chest. She offered a faint smile, her composure unbroken, but beneath the surface, her heart raced, a chaotic rhythm she fought to suppress, knowing she couldn't let his approval sway her purpose. The meal continued, each clink of crystal and murmur of conversation a reminder of the world Elise had infiltrated. She played her role flawlessly, charming enough to deflect suspicion, but Amelia's relentless scrutiny was a constant pressure, her icy demeanor a warning that Elise's presence was under suspicion. The weight of her mission, to uncover evidence of the Cavendish family's crimes, pressed down on her, a silent drumbeat urging her to stay focused. Yet Julian's presence was an increasing distraction, his occasional glances carrying a warmth that unsettled her. She reminded herself of her father's downfall, the loss that had set her on this path, but the memory of Julian's touch in the garden lingered, a moment that had breached her defenses. As the evening drew to a close, the guests rose, their voices buzzing with satisfaction and intrigue. Julian and Elise wove through the crowd, the room's golden light casting long shadows. In a sudden, unexpected gesture, Julian took her hand, his grip firm yet gentle, guiding her through the throng. The contact sent a jolt through Elise, a surge of warmth that set her senses alight, threatening to unravel her resolve. She quickly withdrew her hand, muttering an apology for her clumsiness, her voice steady despite the storm within. Julian's eyes met hers, a question flickering in his gaze, but he said nothing, turning back to the crowd. Elise's heart pounded, a wild beat she couldn't quiet, torn between the truth she sought and the man beside her, whose tenderness was a dangerous temptation. Outside Étoile, the night air was crisp, the city's lights a dazzling backdrop to their quiet departure. Elise stood beside the limousine, her breathing steady as she forced herself to refocus on her mission. She couldn't let Julian's gesture, his unexpected warmth, cloud her judgment. The Cavendish family's betrayal, the schemes that had stripped her family of everything, was her anchor, the reason she had entered this marriage. Yet the memory of Julian's hand in hers, the way he looked at her with gentle curiosity, stirred a longing she hadn't anticipated, a crack in the armor she'd worn since her father's fall. She climbed into the car, her eyes fixed on the distant city, but her thoughts lingered on Julian, a man who was both her enemy and an enigma she couldn't ignore. The drive back to the mansion was quiet, the limousine's interior a cocoon of tension. Elise's mission was clear. Find the evidence, expose the Cavendish family's crimes, and honor her father's legacy. But Julian's growing warmth was a complication, his admiration a danger she hadn't prepared for. The safe in Julian's office loomed in her mind, its secrets the key to her vengeance. But the thought of facing him again, navigating his world, stirred a quiet fear, not of failure, but of the possibility that this game might demand more than justice. It might demand her heart, a price she wasn't ready to pay. The city's pulse thrummed outside the window, a reminder of the fragile beauty in this deadly game, and Elise steeled herself for the challenges ahead, knowing each step brought her closer to her goal, and to a reckoning with her own desires. Beneath the veil of night, the silent corridors of the Cavendish mansion stretched like dark arteries, their marble floors glinting faintly as Elise Harper moved with feline stealth toward Julian Cavendish's private office. Her heart pounded as she eased the door open, the room cloaked in shadow save for a sliver of moonlight slicing through the heavy curtains. Behind a hidden panel in the far wall stood the safe she had discovered weeks earlier, a steel sentinel guarding the secrets of the Cavendish family's scandal, crimes that had shattered her own family. With steady hands, Elise deployed a small, specialized device, its soft clicks echoing in the stillness. The safe yielded, revealing a trove of documents, ledgers, contracts, and incriminating correspondence exposing the Cavendish family's illicit dealings. Her pulse raced as she photographed each page, the camera's shutter a whisper in the dark, but a faint creak from the hallway froze her in place. She spun around, the shadows swallowing the room, yet an unshakable sense of danger gripped her. She secured the drive, slipped out, and vanished into the corridor. But the eerie feeling of being watched clung to her like a specter in a nightmare. The days that followed were an agonizing trial, with Elise living in a state of constant tension, her nerves frayed by the ever-present threat of discovery. The photographs, now sent to a trusted contact, a hacker skilled at exposing corporate corruption, were her lifeline to vengeance, a step closer to unveiling the truth about the Cavendish family's betrayal that had destroyed her father's legacy. But the mansion felt like a tightening trap, its opulent corridors suffocating under the weight of her secrets. Every glance from the staff, every fleeting shadow, fueled her paranoia, as if the very walls conspired against her. She moved with calculated precision, her instincts honed by years of plotting as the daughter of the Cavendish family's sworn enemy. But the sense of an unseen pursuer grew stronger, a ghostly presence she couldn't shake. Her mission was clear: prepare to release the evidence, honor her family's loss. But the looming danger rattled her resolve, warning that her time was running out. Meanwhile, Julian grappled with a growing unease gnawing at his core. Elise's presence, once merely a necessity to conceal his family's scandal, had become a puzzle he couldn't solve. Her intelligence, the way she deflected the elite's scorn with razor-sharp wit, and her enigmatic smile, hinting at hidden depths, had undermined his initial dismissal of her. He had pegged her as a compliant pawn, a tool to protect Cavendish enterprises, but her presence had ignited something deeper. One night, driven by a suspicion he couldn't name, Julian followed Elise through the mansion's darkened corridors, his footsteps silent on the plush carpets. Reaching the office, he paused at the door, his breath catching as he glimpsed Elise at the safe, her movements precise as she photographed its contents. His heart pounded, not with anger, but with a painful realization. Elise was hiding something profound, a truth that could destroy everything he had fought to preserve. The incident in the office haunted Julian, a seed of doubt growing with each passing day. He watched Elise more closely, noticing the tension in her posture, the way she scanned the shadows. She was too cunning, too composed, every action betraying a purpose beyond that of a reluctant bride. The memory of her quiet strength in the garden, her vulnerability when their hands touched, clashed with the image of her at the safe, a woman driven by a secret heavier than his own. Julian wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but the spark of admiration he felt held him back, an inexplicable pull that made him question not only her motives, but his own heart. The mansion, once a fortress of control, now felt like a stage for a drama he hadn't scripted, its gilded walls closing in with every unanswered question. Elise's days blurred into a relentless cycle of calculated moves and suppressed fear. She maintained her facade at the mansion's endless events, her sharp smile deflecting the elite's curiosity. But the contents of the drive burned in her mind. Proof of the Cavendish family's crimes, a betrayal that had stripped her family of everything. She had passed the evidence to her contact, urging them to await her signal, but the act felt like a countdown to an inevitable clash. Amelia's cold scrutiny, intensified since the dinner at Etoile, was a constant threat, her piercing gaze a reminder that Elise's cover was fraying. Each night, Elise lay sleepless, her father's photo a silent anchor, his resolute face urging her forward. But Julian's image intruded, his unexpected kindness, the warmth of his touch, stirring a longing she couldn't afford, a crack in her resolve widening with each encounter. The mansion's silence was stifling, broken only by the distant ticking of a grandfather clock. Elise's mission was her lifeline, the truth her only path to closure. But Julian's growing suspicion was a ticking bomb she couldn't defuse. She traced the locket she kept hidden, its weight a reminder of the loss that had shaped her life, and steeled herself against the pull of his presence. The secrets in the safe were her weapon, but Julian's doubt was a lengthening shadow she couldn't escape. As she moved through the mansion, the weight of her purpose battled her fear of discovery, a storm brewing within her. The truth was within reach, but so was the risk of losing everything, not just her mission, but the fragile connection she was beginning to feel, a bond that could either save or destroy her. The moonlight draped the Cavendish mansion's garden in a silver veil, its roses glimmering faintly under its glow, a fragile stage for the brutal truth unfolding between Julian Cavendish and Elise Harper. Julian stood before Elise, his tailored suit swallowed by the pale light, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and desperation. The air was thick with the scent of dew-soaked petals and unspoken pain, the silence between them a taut thread on the verge of snapping. Elise, cornered by his piercing hazel gaze, had no escape, her emerald eyes locking onto his with a depth that bared her soul. "I'm the daughter of your family's enemy, disguised for revenge," she confessed, her voice breaking, each word a jagged shard tearing her apart. "But I love you, Julian." The revelation erupted like a storm, raw and unrelenting, shattering the fragile bond they had forged. Julian staggered, his eyes brimming with anguish, the truth a dagger to his heart. He hadn't known her true identity, but the sting of her deception, her calculated infiltration, tore him apart. "I love you," he whispered, his voice hoarse, a fragile confession hanging in the night air. Elise froze, tears streaming down her face, her heart splintering as she turned away, knowing she must choose vengeance over love, even if it broke her. The garden, with its vibrant blooms, was a crucible for their unraveling, each flower a silent witness to the collision of their worlds. Julian's life was built on control, his empire a fortress of wealth and secrets, but Elise's words had crumbled its walls. Her true identity, as the daughter of the Cavendish family's sworn enemy, a man they had ruined years ago, was a truth he'd never suspected, a betrayal deeper than any corporate maneuver. Her confession, laced with love, was a paradox that left him reeling, his mind racing to reconcile the woman he admired with the one who had infiltrated his life to destroy it. Memories of Elise's intelligence, her incisive wit at dinners, and the fleeting warmth of her touch now felt like a cruel mirage, each moment tainted by her hidden purpose. Yet the love he felt, undeniable, raw, clashed with the agony of her betrayal, leaving him adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions. Elise's heart pounded, tears falling like a torrent as she stood with her back to Julian, the weight of her choice crushing her. She had entered this marriage as an avenger, driven by the need to expose the Cavendish family's crimes, to honor her father's legacy and reclaim the justice stolen from her family. The photographs she'd secured from the safe, proof of their illicit dealings, were her triumph, but they came at a cost she hadn't foreseen. Falling for Julian, his unexpected kindness, his searching gaze, had betrayed her own resolve, a crack in the armor she'd worn since her family's collapse. Now, under the moonlight, she faced the torment of choosing between the vengeance she'd sworn and the love that had blossomed against her will. Julian's whispered confession, "I love you," echoed in her mind, a haunting refrain threatening to undo her completely. The confrontation was inevitable, sparked by Julian's mounting suspicion. He had watched Elise, noting her wit, her grace, and the way her eyes flashed with secrets. The night he followed her to the office, catching her at the safe, had confirmed his fears. Elise was not merely Amelia's friend, not a pawn in his sister's scheme. Her actions were deliberate, her marriage a calculated strike, and that truth had gutted him. Yet, as she spoke now, her voice raw with pain and love, he saw not a deceiver, but a woman driven by loss, her scars a map of sacrifices he didn't understand. His own confession, whispered in the dark, was a truth he hadn't meant to voice, a vulnerability he'd buried under years of control. But Elise's turning away, her tears glinting in the moonlight, was a rejection deeper than her deception, a wound that left him grasping for answers in the silence. Elise's steps faltered as she walked away, the roses brushing against her, their thorns faintly echoing the pain within. The drive in her pocket, holding proof of the Cavendish family's crimes, was a burning weight, a testament to her mission's success and her heart's failure. She had sent the files to her contact, a hacker poised to expose the truth, but the victory felt hollow, overshadowed by the love she was abandoning. Julian's words, "I love you," resounded, a bleeding wound with every step. She had fought to keep her heart locked, to honor her father's memory, but Julian's love had breached her defenses, and now, choosing to walk away was a sacrifice that tore her apart. Vengeance was her duty, but losing Julian was a cost she hadn't prepared for, a heartache that would linger long after the garden's roses wilted. The garden fell silent, the moonlight casting long shadows as Elise vanished into the mansion's depths. Julian stood rooted, his chest tight with grief, the weight of her words and his own confession pressing down like a vice. He had built his life to protect his family's legacy, but Elise's revelation had exposed a rot he hadn't seen, a betrayal by those he trusted. Her love, though tangled in deception, was a truth he couldn't deny, and the pain of her departure was a wound that would endure. The mansion, with its gilded halls and hidden sins, was no longer a fortress but a ruin, its secrets laid bare by a woman he had underestimated. As the roses swayed in the night breeze, Julian knew the game had changed, and the path ahead would demand a reckoning. With his family, with the truth, and with the love he had lost. Both, worlds apart, couldn't see the path fate had carved, a journey where love, betrayal, and truth would collide. The Cavendish mansion, with its radiant elegance, was now a chessboard, each move by Elise and Julian a delicate dance between triumph and destruction. Elise fled the garden, her eyes fierce with purpose, but her heart raced, sensing a storm on the horizon. Julian, alone among the roses, felt a cold breeze, as if fate itself signaled the challenges ahead. Their hearts stood on a precipice, bound by a truth that would soon demand a reckoning, a clash of vengeance and love that would reshape their fates in ways neither could foresee. Dawn broke over New York with a fragile light, casting long shadows across the sprawling grounds of the Cavendish mansion, where the air still bore the weight of a truth laid bare. Elise Harper's revelation had ignited a firestorm, her evidence, photographs of incriminating documents exposing the Cavendish family's illicit dealings, poised to shatter their empire. Yet, in a moment of wrenching clarity, she had chosen to abandon her vengeance, unable to destroy the man she had come to love. Now, she was gone, her departure a silent wound in the night, leaving Julian Cavendish alone with the ruins of his legacy and the raw ache of her absence. She had vanished, a shadow in the city, carrying the scars of her mission and the love she had forsaken, leaving behind an emptiness that echoed with pain and regret. Julian stood in his private office, the once grand space now a hollow shell, its gilded walls dulled by the chaos of the scandal. The documents Elise had uncovered, proof of his family's crimes, schemes that had ruined countless lives, including hers, forced him to confront the rot he had never seen. Her confession in the garden, under the moonlight, replayed in his mind, her voice breaking as she revealed her identity as the daughter of his family's enemy. Her love for him a desperate plea amidst the truth. Julian had been shattered, not just by her lineage, but by her deception. Her love a blade cutting deeper than any corporate betrayal. Yet as the empire teetered, he felt not anger, but regret, a gnawing need to atone for the sins he'd inherited, and for failing to hold on to the woman who had changed him. He sprang into action, ordering audits of the company's dealings, vowing to dismantle the corrupt networks his family had built, but each step was haunted by a question. Could he find Elise again? Could she ever forgive him? Elise, now a specter in the city's heart, moved through its streets unseen, her heart heavy with the cost of her choice. The truth was secured, her father's honor preserved, but the price was a love she hadn't meant to feel. Julian's whispered, "I love you," echoed in her ears, a wound bleeding with every step. She had left the mansion, a single rose from the garden tucked in her bag, a fragile relic of what might have been. Her scars, both visible and hidden, mapped her losses, and though she had spared Julian, the emptiness of losing him was a fresh pain. She wondered if he would search for her, if forgiveness was possible. But the weight of her deception, choosing truth over love, kept her moving forward, a solitary figure in a world that had never been kind. The ripples of the scandal tore through Cavendish Enterprises, with investors pulling out, stocks plummeting, and lawsuits looming. Julian faced each crisis with a resolve he hadn't known he possessed, driven by Elise's courage, her strength a beacon even in her absence. He delved into the company's records, uncovering deeper layers of deceit, each discovery a step toward redemption. But in the late nights, alone in the mansion's silence, he traced the memory of Elise's eyes, fierce yet tender, and wondered if she could ever see him as more than the heir to her family's downfall. The question gnawed at him. Could he find her, convince her to rebuild what they had lost, or was their love a casualty of the truth she had uncovered? Elise, in her quiet refuge, clutched her father's photograph, his resolute face a reminder of why she had fought. News of Cavendish's turmoil reached her, a bittersweet echo of her abandoned plan. But Julian's face, his anguish in the garden, his tearful confession, haunted her dreams. She had chosen mercy, but the cost was a heart broken by love, a wound that refused to heal. She wondered if their paths might cross again, if forgiveness could bridge the chasm between them. But the scars of her deception held her back, a barrier as real as the city's concrete walls. Their story remained unresolved, a tapestry of love and betrayal yet to be finished. Elise, a shadow in the dark, carried her rose and her regrets, while Julian rebuilt, haunted by the woman who had reshaped him. Their future hung in the balance, the possibility of reunion a fragile thread against the backdrop of corporate collapse. The lesson of their journey echoed. Love, though pure, can shatter under deception, but truth, however painful, can pave the path to redemption. For those who follow their story, it's a call to courage, to face betrayal and fight for love despite the odds. Share this tale of resilience and heartache with friends, spreading the message of bravery and devotion. Subscribe to 60 Millionaire Story, hit the bell, and immerse yourself in more gripping tales, where hearts navigate the shadows to find their way.